Okay, good. Let's start the session. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our mid-scale, dissecting mid-scale session. I think it's hard to make it interesting when it's 3 o'clock, almost 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So I'll try to make this as casual as I can. What we've decided as a group is that we try to make it as interactive as possible. I think what I have prepared some questions, but I think I would like to get the interaction. So I've told the organizer to, if you have any question, just you don't have to wait till the end of the session. Just write them down, and so that I will ask the organizer to show it early. I mean, whenever there are some questions. So I have a very distinguished panelists today to talk about this important segment. I think it was Michael Eisenberg who said it this morning that mid-scale Accor is still the largest segment in Indonesian hotels. Definitely, I think it's and by far, I think you can probably agree with me the fact that in the past 10 to 15 years, both the mid-scale and economy segment has been the fastest growing in Indonesia, along with the increase in the middle class in Indonesia, and of course the huge amount of traffic in terms of the low-cost carrier in Indonesia. So I would like to start with the just giving you a sort of a illustration. I mean, we as Accor Indonesia, we celebrated last year at our 25th anniversary of our arrival into the Indonesian market, and I was just looking at our figures, and we have about 40% mid-scale and 40% economy in our open hotel, and another the same sort of like breakdown for mid-scale and economy for our pipeline. Now, having said that, that is the past, meaning these are all the project we signed in the past, like let's say 5 years. So what we're going to see today from the panel of experts is to see what's in store in the future. Do we think that the mid-scale will behave the same way into the future, because we know the fact that the market is changing, the dynamics are changing. So without further ado, let me just ask each one of you to do an opening remark along the line of like, how do you see this segment growth has been in the past, let's say 5 years? What have you learned? What have you noticed about this, especially of course in the Indonesian context, maybe in Balinese context? Maybe we start with Armand.
Okay, so I'm Armand from Tauzia Business Development. So I think one of the key things actually that we can retain is that, for example, Tauzia is actually built on the mid-scale explosion of Indonesia. So today we represent about 62 properties operational with another 50, 60 under development. I think basically what we have seen in the past is that mid-scale started off very simple. I mean, I think 20 years ago, hotels were principally determined by whether or not they were clean or they were unclean. So progressively we've seen that actually it's gone from 4-star, 3-star, 2-star, and that this has targeted really the entire middle class. That is the mid-scale segment, and I think that a lot of Tauzia's story is a lot built on the proliferation and expansion of the middle class, and also the varying needs that they've had experience for. So we can see it exploding in both meetings, incentives. 10 years ago we didn't have a ballroom full of people just celebrating a birthday. Now I think that is about the explosion of the middle class and disposable income in the country. We also see it with budget hotels, where before people were looking more to stay in, well, kos-kosan or some accommodation, which just basically like with the people. But now people are looking to stay more in professional hotels. So I think this is the backstory of Tauzia's expansion, and I think obviously it's different from where mid-scale hotels will go in the future.
Right. What about Intercontinental?
So my name's Nathalia from the Hotel Intercontinental Group. So basically, we have 5,723 hotels globally. And out of this, actually 60% is in the mainstream, which is your Holiday Inn Express. So for Indonesia, we first entered the market in 1993, actually, with a luxury brand, which is the Intercontinental in Jimbaran. However, since then, we have also grown our presence in the market. Now with over, we have 22 hotels open here in Indonesia, and half of those, in terms of the room count, is in the mid segment as such. And we do see that this market is potential for us, given the fact that aside from Bali and Jakarta, which was previously mentioned as the two key luxury segments, there are a lot of other new locations, especially when we open up new destinations across the country, where we see the potential for our growth as well.
Okay. Wyndham?
No, David.
David.
Sorry.
Need to be personal. Okay.
I guess Wyndham have made their money throughout the world. 9,000 hotels, and a lot of those are in the mid-market across the globe. Indonesia and Southeast Asia, for that matter, is no different. We see probably more and more mid-market properties coming in line. The other thing I guess I'm starting to see is sort of going back to Michael's comments this morning, the integration almost of the lifestyle hotel with the mid-market brand. So our Ramada Encore brand, for example, is now starting to have a little bit of a funkiness about it, our Trip brand. And I think that's all driven by the mid-market in Indonesia, price of land, and particularly from a franchise point of view, most of our properties, if they're under 100 rooms, they may as well be franchised. They're not going to be managed. So that's where we're seeing the growth.
Okay. Patric, from
Good
Golden
afternoon.
Tulip point of view?
Yeah, my name is Patric Sibourg. I'm an ex-colleague of my guru, my teacher, Mr. Rio,
Sama-sama.
for some 25 years. A bit less than Michael Eisenberg, 22.5 years. I make a calculation during the lunch, so I'm still lower. Golden Tulip is in and out, and now we are seriously planning to open many hotels with 3 major brands: Royal Tulip in 5-star, Golden Tulip in 4-star, and the Tulip Inn. I'm interested to talk about the Tulip Inn hotels because it's a relaunch of Louvre and Xinjiang properties, and we are thinking that on the market 3-star plus, which is for you Ibis style or something like that, there is certainly a space to develop around 20 to 30 hotels, but focusing in a secondary city. Right. I think each city above 300,000 people, it means maybe 100 cities in Indonesia, is capable to absorb this development.
Right.
Of course, we are not alone on the market. Of course, we are a bit late. Right. But I think with the product we are launching and with the connection we have, we can get a development of 50 to 70 hotels. Right. Golden Tulip is certainly our trademark and our mark number one, but Tulip Inn will go fast.
Okay. So just picking up on that 3.5 stars comment, when I first saw the title of this session, it says mid-scale. And a lot of the time when we're discussing in sessions like this, normally mid-scale economy is sort of like put together. And this time I think it's very smart for the organizer to focus on the mid-scale, because one of the things that I have noticed in my job, and maybe you can comment later on, is that Indonesia, I think, about 10, 15 years ago, had this amazing explosion of the economy hotels. I mean, 3-star hotel was the thing to do. And then we're finding that the economy hotel, even though we have 40% of our portfolio and the pipeline is in economy, is that maybe it's because of the development or the evolution of the market in Indonesia. I mean, obviously we're getting into the millennials and Gen Z are yes.
Yeah, again, I was going to say, I think it's also driven by the consumer a lot, right? So the consumer now is looking for the mid-scale, the millennials. They're looking for some loyalty programs. Yeah. They're looking for those sort of things. Yeah. And by branding those mid-scale hotels that we've got now, we can give them that loyalty program.
Right. So do you agree that actually the economy hotels is now sort of like the past? I mean, there's always a market for economy hotel, I believe, but not maybe as much as before. And it's sort of like things are moving towards the mid-scale instead of the economy.
Yeah.
Would that be a fair statement?
I think that maybe 20 years ago, what we saw mainly is the explosion of standardized products as economy hotels, mid-scale hotels. I think that actually a lot of the conversations that we've had earlier today regarding lifestyle, regarding guest experience,
Right.
like in the last presentation, I think that this is actually the future of hospitality. So the hardware itself, like today, most people look at hotels and say, oh, this is how many square meters it should be, the facilities, so on and so forth. That's actually not the important part, actually. I think that, for example, with Yellow, what we've done is that we build lifestyle concepts around hotels. Now, what that means is that it keeps operators far more on their feet, because we have to change as well the management, how we do it, how do we actually manage that guest experience, and we also have to be creative about what that hotel represents in each different location. So that, let's say, a property that we own, let's say Yellow in Jakarta is not the same as a Yellow in Manado. And it needs to adapt more towards what kind of experience a guest will want in that city, and also will need to be far more nimble in how it adapts.
Okay.
So square meter wise, product wise, I think the buildings are the same.
Right.
But then how we manage those buildings has to change and has to evolve to what expectations are like from
Right.
people, right?
Okay.
And
Nathalie?
yeah, because I think, and this might actually answer one of the questions as
Sure.
well, in terms of our growth strategy for the next 5 years, because we've been in the market actually since 1993 as such, and so far a lot of our locations, a lot of our hotels are in Bali and in Jakarta. And we do find that in the new destinations that I'm traveling to with a lot of our owners, actually a lot of the owners I'm dealing with are actually new owners. They've never had hotels before. Most of their main business are, whether it's palm oil or paper, it's a lot of the other businesses. So when they do come to us, they have, in terms of a size, in terms of the square meters, and firstly, they typically go to the architects who may come up with a quick outline as to what the hotels would be. However, when it comes to, I guess, each of the different locations, yes, we do provide in terms of, what would be the number of key counts that would be feasible. But then in terms of the room sizes, it may differ from one location to another because of the fact that maybe in certain city locations, it's going to be predominantly market segments that are towards your government business. And actually for a lot of the hotels that I find in Indonesia, outside of Bali, the government business plays an important sector. So in that sense, I think that's where some of the facilities that we provide ends up having to cater for that, and whether that's in your luxury or mid-segment as well. However, in the mid-segment especially, it's quite key because, especially for these new owners, they do look at the returns. And that's where it's quite critical.
They do look at the returns.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Certainly they do.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Continue.
And I mean, even with the current owners today, and that's the key thing for example, for us, for IHG, is in terms of maintaining our relationship with our owners, because they also operating not just with IHG, but they also have hotels with other brands as well. And I think that's a critical part in terms of, what type of hotels, what are the trends like in the market today, because some of the features that may be a brand standard that's initially created in the US or in Europe may have to differ slightly for products that are in Indonesia, where we see a lot of the MICE business is coming from government, and also where the weddings business is very important for a lot of hotels in secondary cities. Yeah.
Let me just take the top question here. Are there any product offering services in your mid-scale hotel that are unique to the Indonesian hospitality footprint? Maybe Patric, do you have any plan for any specific?
No, I would like to come back a
Sure,
bit in the past
sure.
because we talk about ROI and everything. You know more than me because I'm not in charge of development, but 3 or 4 of you, you know very well. If you invest an average of $45,000 per room for 3-star plus, which is a cost already today, yes or not?
Yeah.
How much?
For mid-scale, maybe about 60 to 80.
No, I'm talking about economic first.
Economy, okay.
An Ibis is what, $40,000?
Between 30, 60, yeah.
Okay, so the return on investment, how you make your calculation? Because if you put the $40,000 in rupiah, it's 600 million.
Yeah.
This is quite expensive.
Right.
And just thinking that when we opened my former Ibis, it was $25,000 per room because the exchange rate was 9,000. So today, with an exchange rate at 14,500 or 15,000, and the rate is still the same as 8 years ago.
Right.
How can we grow? How can you make a profit when your investment is huge and your revenue is not growing so fast? So I'm still thinking that the mid-scale, as we discussed before, mid-scale hotels, Aris, Holiday Inn, myself with Golden or any, or Wyndham, sorry I forget you. We have to be sure that we are providing good service, but how to increase the rate? That's the problem today.
Right.
How to move from 550 or 600,000 to 800,000, because all the expenses are increasing. The manpower is expensive. In 2000 or 95 even, you need to have 1 employee per room.
But, I mean, to that point, we've just signed up a property here in Bali that was independent, and it'll convert over to Ramada.
Where is that, sorry?
In Kuta.
Kuta, okay.
It'll sign over in November. The reason they did that, even though they have 3 other hotels here in Bali, was that they wanted to raise their rate, and they saw the potential
That's the key.
with a brand that they could raise the rate that little bit extra. Not
I mean, if you make it in
significantly,
Kuta, you
not,
have no
not
problem.
significantly in our overall
Right.
figures.
If you make it in Kuta or the Intercontinental in Jimbaran, you have no problem. But the city center, or look at the Sunset Road today, we have 25 hotels around.
Correct.
Right.
And we are fighting for 50,000. So now we don't put even the rate outside.
Yeah.
Check inside if you know my rate. You know?
Armand, do you have any view on this?
Well, I mean, I'm sort of looking simultaneously on the
Questions, yeah.
and also what's been talked about. So I think that yes, is that I think today the easiest way, it's easy to implement, but it's hard to do, is to basically find creative solutions about enhancing the product within the room, to enhance the guest experience through modular things that you can tag on to a hotel. Because, for example, the standard model of hospitality, which has been to roll out a product which is the same everywhere around the world, it's not really the case anymore. Maybe it's because the millennial markets come online, maybe it's also because expectation is different today. So I think that is what everyone's looking for. You're right, absolutely. It's like room rates in Indonesia are quite low, and getting a 20, 30, 40,000 rupiah increase actually is very positive.
So am I right by this exchange just now? You're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, that over, let's say, the past 10 years, the mid-scale segment especially, or even the economy, the rates has been quite steady. I mean, occupancy have gone up. So you're saying the yield keep going down for the investment. Is that what you're saying?
The yield, I mean, the thing is that obviously a lot of real estate is all about timing, right? So when the market was pumped, then after that everyone came in with supply, and then after that the government then has to restrain that a little bit. So obviously this is part of a wave and ebb and flow of what hospitality is like. Yes, today we're at a lower end of what that's like. Now that doesn't necessarily mean, if we look at Southeast Asia, so I mean, if I tie in as well with some of the questions, is that like last year we tied in with Capital Land to become their lodging division for hospitality. Now, one of the reasons for this is that, what has happened in Indonesia the past 10, 15 years with the middle class is reproducing itself all across Southeast Asia.
Right.
Simultaneously is that, Indonesia is actually a great laboratory because we have those problems of rate. So since we have those problems of rate, we have to be the first ones to experiment with new concepts, to try new things, maybe a family room, add some bells and whistles on the TV to play with the yield. Now then, these small components will then replay themselves across Southeast Asia. Now, we are in a good place to be a lab for this. So one of the reasons, that we can do it quite easily is because, well, our head office is here, and then we can sort of, try
Play
different
around
things
with it,
quite quickly. And Southeast Asia as a whole is actually a market that's integrating slowly but surely as well.
As with the rest of the world. So I'm going to pause a second. Let's take a look at some of these questions. Tauzia, what is your competitive advantage over the global brands? Let's put that aside for the time being. Have you noticed significant change in the MICE demand over the past, in terms of destination weddings? That's a bit of a sort of it's very highly specialized question. Does any one of you want to tackle that one about MICE and weddings?
No, I'll pass.
You pass. Okay. Patric, no?
No.
Okay.
No, but I cannot see the questions because the screen is not
Right.
very clear. Change is mice.
Okay, let's
the problem with the mice today is when you talk about corporate mice or government mice, they really need to have an entire product rate. It means you cannot make any more like a gala dinner or something. Forget it, because we have a budget very strict and very, very low, and you have to focus on this. It's very hard to increase any rates again. The rate is the situation is not authorizing you to do something else.
Okay, so let me. We talk about the top line just now. Okay, it's hard to increase the rates. Occupancy, I guess, is sort of up and down.
But quite stable.
Yes.
Lucky we are.
Yeah, but we're looking, hopefully in the next 5 years, we're looking at a good sort of steady pace. What about now the expenses? In mid-scale contexts, can you comment on the trend of expenses in your hotels?
So I guess, again, coming back to franchise, so most of our mid-scale properties, 100, 120 rooms, franchised. Right? So again, leave it with mum and dad, because they started as mum and dad hotels.
Okay.
Leave it with them, put some brand standards in, and lift the overall thing.
That's in Indonesian context?
That's Indonesia, and that's probably a lot of Southeast Asia too.
Right. What about you, Nathalie?
Well, I think with any hotel operations, the key expense is more so the payroll component. And so for Indonesia as well as other markets, this continues to increase as such. And that's where, again, it does come down to the ADR as well, because that's where if the ADR increases, then the opportunity to, because no matter how much cost control you do, you still need people to actually work in the hotels. For us, that's where our Holiday Inn Express brand has been quite a success, because it's a lot more compact with less labor, because it does play an impact in terms of what the profitability level comes in at.
What's the minimum number of rooms you'll do for a Holiday Inn Express?
We've actually tied it up to depending on the demand for each of the locations. The ones that we have at the moment is above the 100 key count as such.
What would be your lowest?
At the moment, it's still within the 100 plus. Because at the end of the day, you still require certain key counts to be able to make the top line. And the top line is the key component. But we're also looking now at other locations outside of, I can tell you we're looking at Kalimantan and Sumatra, as well as in Sulawesi, where we're getting leads that are less than the 100 key counts. But obviously, again, it goes back to what's currently in the market today, and how many, what would be the minimum manning that's required, and seeing whether it's viable or not. Because at the end of the day, for the owners, they're also, with the ones I'm dealing with especially, they are looking at it a lot closely in terms of whether that would stack up with the mixed-use projects that they have, or even with the standalone hotels. The room size, we're still in terms of, I think in terms of the sizing, again, we do have a minimum room size
Right.
as such, and I think that needs to still tie up with the brand standards that we have. But then you look at some new locations that are coming up in Jakarta, where they've got such a small
Can I go
piece,
back to
yeah.
the 100 room again? So you're saying for Holiday Inn Express in Indonesia context, you will accept a project 100 room or more? That's what-
Correct.
okay.
Yes.
In secondary, tertiary cities?
Yes.
Okay, on full management?
Correct.
Correct,
Yeah.
okay. So going back again to the labor cost, is it fair to say that, I mean, in the mid-scale context, I suppose this could also happen in the other upper upscale or even economy. So with the increasing labor costs, that means maybe the body count will actually decrease. Is that sort of the trend?
I mean, I think that the body count has already decreased a lot in the past 4 or 5 years, dramatically so. I mean, I think in the boom times, minimum wage would go up 20–25% on an annual basis. So I think a lot of operators now have already come down to, well, most of the fat is already gone. Maybe some of the meat has started to fly off.
Right.
So now there's maybe the only other thing you can really look at is clustering certain services together among several properties. So yeah, in terms of
What kind
cost,
of ratio are we talking about for mid-scale?
well, it depends. Like, I mean, for example, it depends on number of rooms and
Right.
what facilities they have as well. But like, for example, if we look at Harris, just 3–4 years ago, we were at 0.8, 0.9. Well, sorry, 1, and then now we're gliding towards 0.8, 0.7. So
Right.
that's quite a remarkable, actually, contraction. Now, if we go any further, then after that it starts to eat into the guest experience, which I think is what we're also talking about,
Right, right.
which will affect the top line, and well, then you get into a vicious cycle as well.
Patrick, what ratio are you using right now for
Well,
mid-scale?
0.5, 0.6.
Okay.
But also, the key is certainly to have a XCOM level, a top level, and maybe HOD a bit lower level.
Right.
To be sure the F&B is covering everything, including the kitchen, back of the house, front of the house. To have two XCOM very senior,
Right.
and the rest very junior, to save a lot of money. This certainly is the key to success.
I just saw one question. I think it's related to what we're discussing right now. Define success in mid-scale property in terms of GOP percentage. What's your ideals?
The best is 100% GOP.
Okay.
No, I think today in a mid-scale, if you get to 40, 45, you're very happy.
Okay.
All right? Depend location, depend the competition, what is the rating you can sell.
40, 45.
Yeah, it's good.
David?
Well, again, like I said originally, mid-scale to me, most of our properties
Our
have
franchise,
been
yeah,
a
yeah.
franchise.
But
They're
what do you even have an inkling of how they're doing in the
No.
GOP? Oh, you don't. Okay.
No, so that's the other option
Okay.
too.
Okay. What about you, Nathalia?
For us, it's around about the 40 to 48%.
40 to
Yeah.
48. Okay. Armand?
Yeah, so on the basis that we're looking at, because mid-scale actually sometimes is I kind of feel that we're talking, it's a range between 3 and 4, right? So
For us, it's like Mercure and Novotel.
yeah,
Those are
exactly.
our
So
mid-scale,
the same benchmark is that I would say that like usually the ones that can achieve 40 to 45% are usually quite MICE heavy.
Right.
A room-only mid-scale hotel usually cannot sustain those kind of gross operating profit margins. So yeah, that would be definitely successful.
Do you feel that the GOP percentage is actually dictated to a certain extent by the number of keys, the inventory?
Certainly.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
You agree?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. Let
In
me
my
see.
former experience, I used to manage a big hotel for Accor, without doing anything, you do 50% GOP.
Right, right. So how critical is loyalty program to mid-scale hotels? That's another question.
Depends on the brand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for us. Yeah.
For us, definitely. I mean, we have over 114 million members globally. When we look at it sort of specifically in Asia today, it is a much smaller number of that, of which it's continuing to grow. And for us, for a lot of our hotels, the memberships contribute up to about 40 to 60%, which is a huge plus. And especially when we're opening up new hotels, these are our first target market because they know our brands and they know what the expectations are as well. So definitely,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
You will
essential.
Yeah.
For me, it's a bit different because I say my boss before, Alex, the market, Indonesian market is huge for our brands. Even if we are international exposure with Golden Tulip, the market is 90% domestic, except in Bali, where the inbound is quite important. Yeah. So for us, the worldwide loyalty program of Louvre Hotels is not very efficient because of that, you know. So we are waiting to have more than 25 hotels in operation to launch our own program. You heard about Accor Plus, you know Accor Plus?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You
of
know?
course. Yes.
So we'd like to do something a bit similar with
Similar
Accor Plus.
For domestic market.
For the domestic market,
Yeah,
because
right.
it's too important.
Right.
It will be in one language because when you have a country of 300 million people, you have to think first your primary market is Indonesian.
Yeah, yeah.
And after, of course, let the international brands with Louvre and Golden Tulip and everything to do the inbound for the flavors, which is a program of Golden Tulip.
Right. So, Armand, quick
so
comment.
on the loyalty program, so we launched our loyalty program about 2 years ago. So yes, most of the Indonesian market is Indonesian. But I think that it's important not just in terms of getting the first guest from abroad and anything, but it's also very important in terms of yield management. Because I think the biggest battle today is obviously with distribution and also where are these guests coming from. And if you don't have a loyalty program, then it means that there is no channel that you can convert them to hold them there as well.
Right.
Because it doesn't cost more to the hotel. So I think it's important for the future as well to control distribution far more.
Because you have the network.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, we don't have that much time left. I just want to touch a little bit on, I think it's been mentioned several times during the course of the day about lifestyle, right? I think somebody mentioned to me that, standardized hotel is a thing of a past. I think you mentioned that a little bit. And into the future, and our CEO happened to agree with this. That's why I think we have like about 7 or 8 now in our portfolio. Suddenly, all of a sudden, in the past 2 years, lifestyle brand from economy all the way to luxury. So how do you see this lifestyle brand in your own portfolio? Is that something that you already have, you're thinking of? How do you see this evolving? Maybe Nathalia?
Okay, so in terms of our lifestyle brands, we currently have 2, which is the Kimpton. And actually for us, we will have our first Kimpton in Indonesia here in Bali, which we're hoping to open up next year or later this year. And our second one is actually Indigo. So we have already here in Bali, which is the Hotel Indigo Seminyak.
Yeah.
If you haven't been, please go there. And we have our GM, Jean, here with us as well today. And for the Indonesian market especially, I think for the lifestyle brands, it is something that we are seeing a lot of interest, especially with the Indigo, because we do have a hotel opening already. And we do see a potential in this market to actually grow because, as we all mentioned previously, I don't think it appeals just to the millennials, but also those that are more towards wanting to have a hotel to stay where they can relate to the neighborhood in terms of the arts, the culture, which is actually our concept in terms of the Indigo. It relates to what is in the surrounding areas of the hotel, whether it's the music, the art, or maybe there's certain history about where the hotel
area.
is located. And I think that's where, in all the different segments, people want to relate more to places where they stay, the experiences that they
The
have at
community,
the
basically,
hotel,
yeah.
and be a lot more engaging with the community that they deal with. And also, that's where the sustainability element also comes in.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about you, David?
Yeah, Trip is our experience. We're in discussions now for one in Bali and one in Jakarta. Trip is all about experience, and that's what we talk about more and more. It's not just staying in a hotel or staying in the bed. It's
Right.
about the experience that you get, and that you can Instagram that to the world and things like that. So Trip is our brand, and that's what we're pushing. Room size is about 18 square meters, sort of thing.
1.8.
Yeah.
Okay. What about you, Patric?
It's not,
Not
clear
yet.
yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Okay, but our umbrella from Xinjiang, as you know, is traditional blue also, because it's attached to Xinjiang a few months
Yes.
ago.
Yes.
So something will happen, but it's a bit too early to
not yet,
talk about.
okay. I think we have the other extreme is, I think Armand is,
Exactly.
your group is probably one of the first that actually venture into that more than others.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that we've been in it for quite some time. So we
Yes.
started off as
Yes.
lifestyle hotels in the sense that we have the staff that all participate in a move. I mean, there's photo competitions for Harris brand to open
You're
it up.
ahead of the curve.
Well, but the curve, as it keeps going. So
Right.
the next curve ahead, I think, is also how do we tailor lifestyle to different locations
Right,
as well?
right, okay.
Because it's very hard to have an SOP on lifestyle
Yeah.
because different segments, different markets have different expectations of what lifestyle might be.
Right.
I mean, you could even look, for example, a 5-star hotel will generally have a nice bar as a plus. But then if you move into 3-star, especially in Indonesia, you may not need a bar. Especially when you go to secondary, tertiary cities. Jakarta may need one. So it's always about being nimble and adapting the lifestyle to where you're actually planting a flag, and then to really roll it out so that there's, life in the lobby. Yeah.
Your comment begs the question, so there is no standard?
Pario, can you
So there is one.
in Accor, what is lifestyle Accor?
Sorry?
Lifestyle Accor.
Oh, we have
They
we
got
have
like
many.
7
I
brands.
mean, most of our recent acquisition has been in lifestyle. Like I think Michael mentioned, we have 25 Hour, we have Mama Shelter, we have Joinjo, which is our
No,
creation.
for Indonesia, I'm talking
Tribe,
about.
sorry?
Indonesia.
Oh, not yet in Indonesia, but we
thank
are.
you.
No,
Welcome
but,
to the club.
No, but we are. No. No, we are in discussion for a couple of tribes.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, Tribe, I think, is one of those brands that is sort of like what we discuss about Indonesia going from 3-star, to 4-star kind of a space. It is sort of like an Ibis Styles product, which is actually finished like a Mercure. So it's very
what I
interesting.
mean, it's not because you open a rooftop bar that your hotel become a lifestyle.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
it's also about
It's a
the
little bit more
training,
than that.
the
It's a
people,
little bit more than that.
the software and the hardware should be adapted.
Correct,
you know?
correct,
It's
correct.
not only put a roof bar and become a lifestyle hotel.
So we have about a minute and a half left, so I'm going to end this with a closing remark from each one of you, but I want to try to see whether we can have a little bit of fun here. Share with us your personal experience with mid-scale brand in Indonesia, which you'd like to highlight. It doesn't actually, it doesn't have to be your own brand. It could be any brand that you would like to share with us.
Oh, me, I would like to share something. I don't know, Mark's still here.
Okay.
Yeah. When I opened Novotel Toraja in '95, remember, Mark? It was 165 rooms, something like that, 4-star. And we make the grand opening with Mr. Baramoli in '95, and only 60 rooms are ready. And that's it. He say, I give you the key, you're responsible. I say, but I have only 60 rooms. I don't have money. I cannot finish anymore. Just make it
Happen.
Something happen like
Make
that.
it happen.
It takes 3 years to open the hotel, you know.
Well, I'm more actually talking about your personal experience staying in a mid-scale hotel, your experience, and then basically saying, this is something special, or this is something so bad that, but don't name any names.
No.
I mean, it could be negative or it could be positive. I'm hoping it's positive. Do you have any, Nathalia? I don't know. I mean, it's easy to ask this question in a luxury space, but what about mid-scale?
Gosh.
Something unusual. I don't know, it doesn't have to be Indonesia. I guess we'll widen the scope. I don't know if you...
No, I mean, so there's a mid-scale hotel that was in Bangkok that I stayed in. No names will be named.
Yeah.
But so facility-wise, it's fantastic. You know, you have the grab and go, you have artwork, it's beautiful. But there's nobody there.
Okay. The
So,
guests, you mean?
well, there's nobody there, there's no guests, there's no life. So it's almost like, in some cases, you can sometimes see a disconnect between the hardware, which is perfect, and then the software, which is just, could be absent. So in a product like that is that it was perfectly built for a lifestyle hotel, for something mid-scale that is on the mark.
Right.
But it just seemed that maybe the staff didn't get the memo.
Okay, that's fair enough. Okay.
David? I guess probably the Trip Hotel that we've got in Brisbane. I've stayed there quite a few times. Every floor is done by a different graffiti artist. And so you get there one night and get into bed and go to sleep. Next minute you wake up and you forget which floor you're on and which graffiti artist you're supposed to look at. And all of a sudden there's this picture of almost like a woman in a scream sort of position staring at you. So that sort of thing is probably memorable for me.
Nathalia, you
Well,
have anything?
for me, I can't
Nothing
say I
pops
haven't
up.
got
It's okay.
as such. But one of the hotels I would like to stay in is actually our own Holiday Inn resorts in Benoa, which, because one of the things that we've been very active in terms of IHG is in terms of the sustainability initiatives that we've been doing, and Carol, our GM there, has been one of the initiators as well, with collaborating with the other hotels here in Bali to initiate quite a lot of the sustainability efforts that's, I think, a big contribution, including providing the biofuels for the green school. The green school bus, and then the other component is in terms of reusing the soaps and recycling the soaps and to sell them. And that's where I go back to in terms of wanting to contribute back to the community, and because of those type of initiatives, for my own personal trip, that's actually one of the hotels
You like to be part of that experience.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, with that note, I think I can safely say that mid-scale mid-scale level hotel in Indonesia is definitely something that needs to be, reckoned with. And thank you very much for your insight.
You don't tell us, for you, what was the most funny part?
What funny part?
Well, we talk about us, you talk about you.
Oh, about me? Actually, no, I don't. There is one experience in Penang where I actually I was pleasantly surprised because whenever I go to destination, instead of staying in my own hotel, I usually like to stay in just check out the competition and also check out the trend in the market. I was very pleasantly surprised. There is one independent mid-scale hotel. Actually, it's sort of in between mid-scale and economy, which reminds me of Stripe a little bit that we have right now, but at a much simpler. It was very pleasantly surprised because it is independent, and they thought of everything, and it's just like the amount of thought that they put into each of the amenities, the way they designed the room was surprising for me for an independent hotel, which was actually very pleasant. That was a very pleasant experience. So with that note, I think they keep ringing please join me in thanking the panel. Thank you for your insight and sharing. Thank you. Armand?